All right. So you got invited to play D&D, but you've never made a character before, and you want to do it on your own. You don't want to ask your buddy. You want to look like you know what you're talking about. So I'm going to explain everything you need to know to make your first D&D character. The first thing you need to do is make three big choices. You have to choose your race, your class, and your background. If you have access to a player's handbook, that's the easiest place to get all the basic information. There's tons of additional races and classes and other things that you can choose from other sources. But for your first character, you probably just want to stick to the player's handbook. You can use a physical player's handbook. You can go online to a website called AnyFlip. Just Google Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition player's handbook, AnyFlip, and it'll come up. It's a free online version of the D&D player's handbook. There are also apps that look like this that I use for a lot of the information that I get on the fly while I'm playing D&D.
So the very first thing you need to do is determine your ability scores. You have 6 of them: strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma. So strength is your raw physical power. Dexterity is your agility and nimbleness. Constitution is your endurance and hardiness. Intelligence is your mental acuity and memory. Wisdom is like your insight and your true understanding of things. And charisma is your force of personality and leadership. There's 3 ways to determine your ability scores. The lamest way is the standard array. You get a 15, a 14, a 13, a 12, a 10, and an 8, and you can put them in whichever ability scores you want, which in D&D, 10 is the average person. So if you had a 10 intelligence, you'd have a 100 IQ, perfectly average. And it's the same for all 6 ability scores. The second lamest way, and still not the best, is the point buy system. You get 27 points, different numbers cost different points. And then the best way, and the way I recommend everybody do it, especially for their first character, is you roll dice for it. You roll 4 6-sided dice, which is the standard cube die we're all used to seeing. You roll those 4 dice, you take away the lowest one. So if you roll a 1, 2, 3, 4, you take the 2, 3, 4 and add them up, and that gets you 1 number. So you do that 6 times total, so you got 6 numbers. And then you can put those numbers in whichever ability scores you want. I'm going to do a quick overview of each of the classes. So first, you got Artificer, magic and martial class that uses intelligence as its primary ability score, and their abilities focus on infusing items with magic and creating magic items. After that, you have Barbarian, primarily a martial class. Strength is their main ability score, and their abilities are powered by their rage. Then you have Bard. They're primarily a magic class. Charisma is their main ability score, and their magic focuses on messing with people's minds, charming, creating illusions. After that is Cleric. They're primarily a magic class. Their main ability score is wisdom, and they're like a divine conduit for their deity. Their magic focuses on healing, but they have some good damage spells as well. Then you have Druid. They're a magic class whose main ability score is wisdom. They have nature magic, and they have some strong healing and some good attack spells as well. They can also wild shape, so they can turn into the form of an animal. After Druid is Fighter. It's your generic warrior, mainly, that doesn't have magic. It's a broad class: pirate, samurai, gladiator, medieval knight. These would all fall under the fighter class. It can be either strength or dexterity based. After that, you have Monk. They're the Shaolin Kung Fu master. They use dexterity and wisdom as their primary ability scores, and their like class features are powered by their chi. Then you have Paladin. They're like a holy warrior, like a Knights Templar. They use strength and charisma as their 2 main ability scores. They are primarily martial, but they do have a little bit of magic. Then you have Ranger. They are people who are experts with nature. Dexterity and wisdom are their 2 main ability scores. They are a pretty good mix of martial with a decent stealth, and they do have some magic as well. Then you have Rogue, which is your thief, your assassin. Dexterity is their primary ability score. Their features and their class is primarily based around stealth. Then after that, you have Sorcerer. They're a magic class. Their primary ability score is charisma, and their magic is innate in them. They either have a powerful entity in their ancestry, or they were gifted their magic by some thing that happened in their childhood or whatever. Their magic comes from within. And then you have Warlock, which is like a half martial, half magic. And their magical abilities come from a deal they made with a powerful entity, maybe an ancient forgotten god or a demon. Either way, this pact is what gives them their magical abilities. And lastly, you've got Wizard. They're the nerds inside D&D. They're a magic class, intelligence is their primary ability score, and they got their magic through years of hard work and study and going to wizard college and that sort of thing. Your next big decision when making your first D&D character is what race you're going to play. Firstly, you've got dwarves. They're stout, hardy, shorter than your standard human. They're master craftsmen and master miners, and they live underground in vast halls and kingdoms, fortresses. Then you have elves. They have a grace and almost otherworldly beauty. They love nature and magic and art and poetry. They live long lives that makes them see humans as, scurrying around and frenetic. Then you have halflings, which are analogous to hobbits from the Lord of the Rings. They are short, stout. They love the bonds of family and friendship. They also appreciate the comforts of hearth and home. They tend to be very lucky. Then you have humans. They are the most adaptable and widely spread race. They are very diverse in their skills and abilities. They tend to be ambitious and like building cities and libraries to leave a legacy after they're gone. After that, you have Dragonborn, which are like humanoid dragon-looking creatures. They tend to be like 6 foot, 6.5 feet, 300 pounds. They have different color scales instead of skin, just like there's red dragons and white dragons. There's red, white, and many different colors of Dragonborn. They're very loyal to their clans, and they're all proud of their position in their clan. They tend towards striving for excellence in anything they do and hate failure. Then there are gnomes, which are small like halflings, though a little more willowy. They are tinkerers. They have a zeal for life and a joy that just comes from being a gnome that's matched by few other races. After that are half-elves. Some say they have the best traits of elves and the best traits of humans. They don't live as long as elves, but they live much longer than humans. They are of two worlds, but they belong to neither, so it's kind of a tough spot to be in. Humans see them as beautiful and talented and graceful, but elves kind of see them as dull and clunky and almost ugly. So they have to carve out their own place in life. Then you have half-orcs, which are similar in their situation to half-elves in that humans kind of see them as ugly and brutish and dumb, while orcs see them as smart but weak and small. All three things orcs would consider a negative. And lastly, you have tieflings. They have like a demonic or devilish appearance. They have horns and tails, and their skin can be red or purple. And due to their infernal appearance, they're often treated with distrust and suspicion. And so they often treat others with that same distrust or suspicion and kind of survive in the slums or outskirts of human cities. Now it's time to pick your background. Now your backstory is your own individual story you created for your character of who they were before they were an adventurer. Your backstory will fall into one of the backgrounds. They're like categories for backstories. And you'll get a couple of skill proficiencies and tool or language proficiencies from your background. Now, your class and your race will have more impact on your abilities in the game, but your background will have a stronger impact on your personality and who you really are. Because a fighter who grew up as a sailor is going to have a lot different personality than a fighter who grew up as a noble or who grew up as a street urchin.
Once you've chosen your race, your class, and your background, you want to start adding those things to your character sheet. A character sheet is like a nice little template for your character. And I think that by filling out a character sheet, you can learn a lot about how D&D works because the stuff on the sheet is everything you're going to reference when you're playing. And you can learn a lot about who your character is and how to build your character.
We're going to be making a half-elf bard with the folk hero background. I'm going to give him a count of good alignment, which I'll talk about alignment in another video. 0 XP because he hasn't done anything yet. And I decided to give him the name Barnaby Silvertongue. Earlier, I rolled these ability scores. Now, the main purpose of your ability scores is to determine these ability modifiers, the smaller number you'll see underneath. For every even number above 10 your ability score is, you get a +1 to your modifier, and every odd number under 10 you get a -1. So like a 14 is a +2. So anytime you roll something that involves dex, you'll add that bonus, or strength or intelligence or whatever. Most of the time from here on out, people will be asking for your modifier, not for your score. So this is the stuff you get for being a half-elf, and then this is the stuff you get for being a folk hero. So I'm going to go ahead and add that rustic hospitality. Each background has its own unique feature. This one just means that you can always find a place to stay among commoners because you're like a hero to the people. You get a couple of skill proficiencies, and you get proficiency with land vehicles. And one set of artisan's tools, I've chosen painter supplies because of our like artistic build. Your background also gives you a few unique starter items that aren't like weapons and armor. That stuff comes from your class. And it gives you your starting gold. For folk hero, it's 10. Your race will give you these traits. For half elf, it's dark vision, which means you can see in the dark out to 60 feet. Fey ancestry, which means that magic can't put you to sleep and you have advantage against being charmed. And the skill versatility, which means you just get a couple extra skill proficiencies. Your race also gives you your languages. For half elf, it's common and elvish. That's what your parents spoke. And you get one of your choice. So I've chosen dwarvish. Your race also gives you your base speed. For half elves, it's 30 feet. Most races it is. And then your race also gives you a unique boost to your ability scores. For half elf, it's +2 to charisma and a +1 to any 2 other ability scores. So I'll add that in there. It's time to add our class. This is what bards get. All right, so we're going to add all this stuff in. So your base hit die is a D8. So what that means is your HP is based around a D8. So you start out with 8 plus your con modifier, which brings us to 10. And each time when you level, you roll a D8 and add your con modifier. You take that number and add it to your max HP. Bards are proficient with light armor and a few weapons. They get to choose 3 instruments to be proficient in. I've chosen these. They're also proficient in 2 saving throws, dexterity and charisma. They also get to choose 3 skills to be proficient in from any skills. Most classes limit which skills you can pick, but the versatility of bards makes it so you can pick any 3. And I've chosen these because of our charisma-based, silver tongue fox we're dealing with here. Your starting equipment you get to pick. So I've chosen a rapier from the weapons, an entertainer's pack from the choices, which that's like your starting adventuring gear that's not your weapons and armor. You can look up online exactly what's in an entertainer's pack. I've chosen a lute from the instrument options, shred and solos, and you automatically get leather armor and a dagger. The other thing you get at level 1 as a bard is called bardic inspiration. If you have an ally within 60 feet and they can hear you, you can sing a little song, say some inspirational words, and what that mechanically does is it gives them 1d6 that they can add in the next 10 minutes to any attack roll, skill check, or saving throw that they want. They get it one time. And you get a number of those equal to your charisma modifier that you can give out until you take a long rest. So if you'll look, at level 1, your proficiency bonus is +2. It goes up every few levels. It's one of the main ways your character gets stronger. So the saving throws is a good place to start. Each one of those is tied to one of your ability scores. So if you just take the ability modifiers and put them right over to your saving throws, it looks like this. Well, the things that you're trained in, you get to add your proficiency bonus. So those check marks become these numbers. And your skills are the same way. If you'll look, each one of your skills is tied to an ability score. So you just take the ability score modifiers and port them over, and you get these numbers. But then everything you're trained in, you get to add your proficiency bonus. So then those become these numbers. Also, any of these tools you're proficient with, you get to add your ability score modifier. And your weapons, you would pick weapons you're proficient with. So you get to add your modifier, which is either dex or strength. These are dexterity-based weapons. So your +3 from dex and your proficiency bonus gets you that +5 to hit. And you have a specific damage die with your dex bonus. You got your AC. The way you do that is you take your armor's base rating, every armor has its own, and you add your dex bonus. Light armor, you get your whole dex bonus. Medium armor, you get a maximum +2. And heavy armor, you don't get to add your dex at all. And then right next to that's initiative. It's just your straight dex bonus. Some classes and feats will give you additional bonuses to your initiative, but typically it's just your dex modifier moved right over there. You'll also get your passive perception, which is 10 plus your perception bonus. So if you look at your perception skill, whatever your bonus is, add 10 to that. That's your passive perception. And what that's used for is, it is anything that your character would notice when they're not trying. So if you're looking for something, you roll perception. And if you're just walking around, anything that a 13 would notice, you'll notice. So you've also got these other little spaces that have like descriptions, like personality traits, ideals, bonds, flaws. So those are just a way to flesh out your character more. So your personality traits are just like little things about your character's personality, their likes, dislikes, their attitude, mannerisms. Your ideal is like a moral that you follow that you would not act against, or something that would compel you to make a sacrifice. Your bond is a person, place, or thing that you basically would give your life for, or that you would fight to defend, a loved one or a city that you would fight to protect. Your flaw is some vice or weakness that your character has. because, everybody has negatives in their personality. So on the second page, you got a physical description up at the top. There's this chart, so you can roll for your random height and weight, or you can pick your height and weight as long as it falls into what's physically possible for that race. And then every race will have a description of like possible eye and hair and skin color. The rest of this page is for like your backstory and more description of your character, factions you're a part of, or treasure. What I usually use it for is just inventory. I usually just keep my inventory on this page, other than like the physical description stuff at the top. This is the last page of our character sheet. Your spellcasting class is Bard. Your spellcasting ability is Charisma. The formula to figure out your spell save DC and your spell attack bonus is right here. Your spell save DC is the number the DM has to roll to avoid your spells that have a save. It'll say in the spell what kind of save the DM needs to roll, but he'll always have to beat this number. So you get it by doing 8 plus your proficiency plus your charisma modifier. So as you level up, your proficiency goes up. You'll have a higher number. It'll be harder to avoid your spells. Your spell attack bonus works just like a weapon attack bonus, except instead of dex or strength, you use charisma and proficiency, so it'll also get stronger as you go. A lot of your spells will say that they're attack spells, and you have to roll an attack to hit with it. As a first level bard, you get 2 cantrips, which are 0 level spells, which means you can cast them as many times as you want. I've chosen Message, which lets you send a little message to your allies, or anybody within 120 feet, and I have chosen Vicious Mockery, which lets you use your devious insults to cause psychological damage to one of your enemies and make it harder for them to land their next attack. You also get to know 4 first level spells. I've chosen Charm Person, because it always helps to turn an enemy into an ally. Disguise Self, because I never know when I might need to change my appearance to sneak into or out of somewhere. Fairy Fire, because it blankets like a little area and like magical sparklies and makes enemies easier to hit if they fail to save. And Healing Word, because you never know when your allies might need a little bit of HP. So you can tell Bard focuses more on subtler, more clever ways of using magic, not just doing damage or whatever. When you're picking spells, they'll list all the effects of the spell if they happen. It'll also list what kind of action it takes. Some spells are an action, some are a bonus action. Some spells you can actually use as a reaction. It'll list how long it takes to cast a spell. Some spells take an action, some spells take a minute, some spells take an hour. I mean, there's all kinds of spells duration, like spell times of casting. It'll list the range, how far away. Sometimes you can only cast spells on yourself. And it'll also list the duration for how long the spell lasts. Some are instantaneous, some last hours. Another thing to look at when you're picking out your spells is certain spells require concentration. And due to the nature of concentration, you can only concentrate on one spell at a time that requires concentration. So, if you cast another concentration spell, you'll lose concentration on the first and that effect will stop. So at first level, you get 2 level 1 spell slots. So think of spell slots as like a battery. You get 2 charges. So you can cast the same spell twice, or you can cast 2 different spells. But you can only cast 2 first level spells until you get a long rest, like you sleep overnight. Certain spells require material components. That's another thing that'll be listed on the spells is the requirements. Verbal, somatic, material. Verbal means you got to say some words. Somatic means you got to make like hand gestures. So you have to have at least one hand free. And material means like actual physical components, like a little bit of ash or a feather. A spellcasting focus will take the place of those little material components. Now, if the component requires a gold value, like incense or diamonds or something, your spellcasting focus can't take the place of that. But all the little stuff, instead of carrying around a bag of random junk, you can have your spellcasting focus. Bards would usually use a musical instrument because they're kind of crafting music into magic. There are also certain spells that you can ritually cast, which means you have to spend the normal amount of time to cast it plus 10 minutes, but it doesn't cost you a spell slot. You can't really ritual cast in combat because you don't have all that time to sit there, but it can be very useful with certain spells that are good outside of combat.
And once you're done with that, you have your character sheet filled out, you have your character built. There are more and more choices to make as you level up and your character gets more and more unique to you. There are subclasses to choose from. There are more powerful spells. There are plenty of magic items available to find throughout your DM's world. But as far as the things you need to know to make your character, you've got it covered. That's it. Go have fun.